First, I'd like to start with wishing all the dads in here a happy Father's Day. And as a resident of Cutler Bay, one of the things that I really appreciate is how engaged these elected officials and staff from each city is with our citizens, right? Very responsive and it's truly appreciated, especially on my end. What I do with the county, I work for the Department of Emergency Management. I am a planner, and during activations, as we are now, I am the municipal branch director, so I work with all the cities, not just the cities here, but cities throughout the county to respond and coordinate services. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about a little bit about what we do and things that you can do to prepare during the rainy season and hurricane season. What do we do in the Emergency Operations Center? It's located in Doral, in the fire headquarters. What we do is we coordinate, we bring in organizations and our departments to coordinate services and assets to respond to emergencies. So, for example, now we work with our partners in the state, Florida Division of Emergency Management, to bring down, they have a table back here, to bring down assets such as pumps, trucks, etc., to help with relieve the flood waters from the flooded areas. In other disasters, we work with schools, housing, and whatever other services we need to coordinate to respond for the citizens. We have a unified and central command and control facility. Again, I mentioned that's in Doral, and we carry out the principles of emergency management for continuity of operations. Some of the things that we respond to: hazardous material spills, mass migration, wildland fires, tornadoes, yes, we have those here, hurricanes, obviously, pandemics, terrorism, and other major events. In Miami, South Florida particularly, we have a lot of events. We have the World Cup coming in 2026, we have Copa America this year, and then we also respond to floods, which is kind of what's been going on this past week, right? You know, flood season, the rainy season lasts approximately 155 days from May to October. As they mentioned, Cutler Bay 2 years ago, we had some serious flooding. They have made improvements. Palmetto Bay has made improvements. Pinecrest. All the cities have made a lot of investments to mitigate flooding in our cities. And this year, we would have been underwater had it not been for some of those projects that were executed. So we are surrounded by major bodies of water, and our ground is porous, so the water can come up quickly if it's oversaturated. So what we ask is that you know your zone, okay? This is not just for flooding, but for evacuations. So we have these guides in these bags back here that also have a map of this, so that you know your zone. I know that I am in zone A, so I will be first to evacuate before a storm. I have to go anyway because I have to go to work, but it's nice to know that that the city is being looked out for. What do we need to know that? Because storm surge is the greatest threat to life and property. Yes, the wind does a lot of damage, but storm surge is the greatest threat, and flooding thereafter. You can have secondary incidents, such as down power lines in the water. You can have disease, viruses, bacteria, etc., that people can pick up from walking or wading in flooded water, in flooded streets. So what we do is we identify threats in each zone, and we evacuate. We give orders to evacuate pending on hurricane track or on storm tracking, as it is the case in this week's flooding event. For hurricane season, I want to stress how important it is to pay attention to the messaging from our elected officials, our public service officials, because if you recall Hurricane Irma 2017, we had about $487 million worth of damages, and we missed that storm. That storm did not hit us as it was supposed to. The eye was 90 miles away, and we still had an estimated 6 feet of flooding, 3 to 6 feet of flooding, and damage throughout our county. So hurricanes are intensifying more quickly, okay, because of the warmer waters. So we want to make sure that you folks are prepared. So before the storm, and by the way, again, this guide right here has tips for you for before the storm, during the storm, and after a storm. Very important that you get this. Additionally, in those packs, we have information about our app, MDC Ready. Okay, this app, you'll be able to see messaging as well as evacuation orders, your zones, your flood zones, and they'll list any evacuation centers that are open. So what do we want to do? We want to monitor the news for information, safeguard your homes, have a plan for evacuation, have a plan to meet up with family if you need to, have supplies. So we want to fill your gas tank. We don't know if the pumps at the gas station will be working afterwards. Designate a meeting place for your family. If you have out-of-state relatives, make sure that they know how to contact you, or you can contact them to make sure everybody's fine. And make proper arrangements for your pets. I like to keep electronic copies of my home insurance policy so I can have it on my phone whenever I need it, in the cloud, right? And I don't have to worry if it gets destroyed, the actual paper, I still have a copy. Do not, if you have a pool, do not empty the pool, okay? What we're seeing now, for example, when you have rain and then more rain, it's just the ground is already saturated. We don't want to make that happen. We don't want to aggravate the situation by saturating the ground with pool water, right? So it's going to overflow anyway. Just let it happen, and we'll mitigate afterwards. Evacuations. It takes clearance times for our area, Zone A, at least my area, Zone A, is about 23 hours. You can see some of the hours here and why it's such a huge task and endeavor to evacuate. So when a decision is made, it is not made lightly, okay? That's why we ask that you listen to public officials' messaging, because those decisions are made after very much consideration and careful analysis. We do have evacuation centers that are open. We have regular ones, we have medical evacuation centers, and we also have pet-friendly centers. So it's important that all individuals ensure you have your medications, emergency contact information. If you have specific diets, take those items with you. Not every center is pet-friendly, but we do have some pet-friendly centers. And again, those are, as they're open, they'll be listed in the app, okay? And on our website. Prepare your supply kit. Pack everything you need in waterproof containers. Water, you need at least 1 gallon per person per day for at least 3 days. Okay, so you can have clean drinking water. Non-perishable food items, manual can opener. And the electric ones are very easy, but if you run out of batteries, then you have a can and a useless device. Additional emergency supplies, flashlights. These days, with the advancement of solar, there's a lot of solar-powered devices, or devices that you can recharge. You can have a power bank that's solar, recharge that power bank, and charge your batteries and flashlights. So there's a lot of different things that we can do that will help us post-storm. First aid kits, sunscreen, insect repellent, very important with dengue, Zika, and everything else that's out there with mosquitoes. Special items, prescription and over-the-counter medicines, medication, blood pressure medication, insulin, baby food, extra diapers, pet supplies, etc. Please have a plan for all of these things. Very important, the county has a program called EEAP, that is the Emergency and Evacuation Assistance Program. Folks, that information I believe is in the packet. If not, I encourage you to go ahead and take a picture of this screen, or write down the website, or you can call 311. Okay, don't wait till the last minute. We do a call down every year because these, do they have that? Can I move on? Okay, I can always go back to it and give it to you afterwards. This program is designed to help individuals that need assistance with evacuation and sheltering. It may be used post-disaster. It's definitely used pre-disaster. And the residents, focused typically for people in ALFs, nursing homes. They don't qualify for this, but people who need medical assistance, they're unable to evacuate on their own because they need special transportation, or they have medical needs that prevents them from evacuating on their own, they're bedbound, or life-sustaining medical equipment, for example, who need power, right? So we know that the shelters have backup power. It's good to go to a shelter if you need something plugged in, oxygen machines, whatever it may be, because at home you may lose power and that is a life safety issue. Generators, gas generators, you never keep them anywhere near the home. Okay, unfortunately there's a lot of casualties that happen from carbon monoxide poisoning. As I mentioned earlier, with the advancement of solar, now there are electric generators that you can charge with solar panels. Those are always a very good option and a safer option. And don't overload them because then they'll fail. The hurricane guide, as I mentioned, has some information here for before, during, and after the storm. And we have those on the table back there. Again, be informed, make a plan, get a kit, and get involved. Get involved with the communities. Okay, these are great communities that we live in. There's the app right there. Contents include the Know Your Zone, that map with the red, yellow, and green. Evacuation orders are listed on there, bus pickups points for evacuations, 311 contact information, safety tips, etc. There's a hurricane guide. It's trilingual, English, Spanish, and Creole. And it has a checklist, and I'll be more than happy to show you all the contents back there at the table. Myself or Tanya, who's another representative from Dade County Emergency Management. Extreme heat. It's getting hot up there. It's been hot, right? But we're feeling it more these days. So heat season is May 1st through October 31st. So as you prepare for hurricane season, also prepare for extreme heat, which can be particularly harmful to certain populations, such as people who are 65 and older, pregnant women, infants and young children, outdoor workers, people like myself who are a little bit overweight, and people without access to air conditioning. Right? So make sure you stay in the shade, hydrate, and if you have fans or other items that can help, that'd be very useful. So with that, I know I'm a little bit over, but I wanted to run through it. Does anybody have any questions?
I got a question. Yes, sir. When was the last time you ever got flooded in Tri-City? How long ago was ever flooded? I never saw a flood to speak of. I mean, I live in an area where there's a flood back in 19-something, the flood zone. Yeah, it's never happened. It was all in front of my house. That's all I know.
Yeah. Fortunately, the question was, when was the last time Pinecrest was flooded like that? A major flooding event anyway. I am not aware, but with rising sea levels and the more intensifying of storms these days, it's definitely more likely as time goes that we might be seeing more flooding events. I don't remember seeing this many flooding events, in the past 2 or 3 years.
If your home gets flooded and you have flood insurance, it's not a hurricane, is that when the flood insurance kicks in, or does it not pay even like this week?
So it's an insurance question. I wish I had the answer for that, for you for that. That would be between you and the insurance company. I believe we have a public adjuster back here who can provide excellent information about what to do to prepare a claim and to file a claim, right? So, and they're going to be speaking in a minute.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was told my insurance company, I was very flooded. They said, whatever's inside your house is outside your house at the same level as the flood. That's where your flood insurance comes from right there.
Makes sense. Any other questions?
saw my Zoom X. What Zoom X means, I didn't say in the map.
The what?
The flooding Zoom X. Zoom X.
Zone X. Zone X. Zone X, I believe, is no, it's not an evacuation area. But when evacuation orders are given, whether it's by the app or on TV or anything like that, they'll tell you which zone it applies to. So you listen for A, B, C, whatever it may be. I believe X is more of a floodplain information for insurance purposes, not necessarily a zone for evacuation. Yeah. Okay, with that, I know I'm a little bit over time, so I appreciate your time. I'll be back here the rest of the morning to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
And let me introduce one on here. This is our incoming president, Mr. Juan Moya, who's also a former insurance company adjuster, who has been a public adjuster for decades now. So I brought him here for moral support and to answer any questions. So how many folks in this room were here when Hurricane Andrew hit? Raise your hands. Oh, good Lord. So you've all been traumatized. Yes. I was traumatized too. I know what you mean. There you go. How many people in the room have never been through a hurricane? Ooh, there's only a couple of you. Oh my goodness. I hope you don't have to go through one this year, but they do keep talking about this explosive season, so we don't know what's going to happen, and preparedness really is key. Let's go to the next one. Why you might need a public adjuster is a brief video. I hope you can hear it.
Peter Clemens was an elderly woman who had a beautiful townhouse that she was her pride and joy, and she had a water loss there, and the insurance company paid her a little under $6,000 to repair her entire townhouse. After we got involved, we did our estimate, we did our whole adjustment, submitted to the insurance company. We were able to get her over $60,000 for that loss. And it was the amount she needed to rebuild her townhouse. So that was the day I sort of knew, this is a job and a profession that you can make a difference.
And that was our current president, Mr. John Hornbuckle. I can tell you, let me ask one more question. How many folks do not know what a public insurance adjuster is? You're making my life so much easier. So you know what a public insurance adjuster is, and basically what we do is we adjust claims on behalf of the policyholder. Insurance company adjusters adjust the claims on behalf of the insurance companies. So it's very important to understand that distinction. Sometimes people that are maybe not as familiar with what a public insurance adjuster does will assume that the person that's coming out, the adjuster that's coming out on behalf of the insurance company is working for them. But you're not paying them, the insurance company is. Keep that in mind. So why is preparedness so important? I mean, I'm going to go through some of these slides a little more quickly because our prior presenters already covered some of it. So protect your lives, have a plan, an emergency kit, and reduce the risk of injuries. Have enough water. I mean, these are the basics, right? Everybody knows this, batteries, water, that kind of thing. Reducing your property damage. This is funny because with the weather that just happened this week, a lot of you, I'm sure, experienced a lot of water. Maybe you had some leaks in your roof. Maybe you had leaks in your windows. And windows are a pretty interesting thing. If you look at this video, I'm going to have Juan come over really quick, if you don't mind, Juan. Tell them what this is.
This is a drip from one of the screws of the impact window that was installed in my house less than 3 years ago. We still don't know why the drip was going down, but it just goes to show the fact that when you have wind-driven rain, the fact that it's an impact window, it prevents you from impact, but it doesn't prevent you from the potential of leaks that you might be having through the house.
Another very important thing you need to know, I have hurricane shutters, right? It's kind of a false sense of security because they do protect you from projectiles, but we were just in a class earlier this week where we had a window expert explaining that they've done studies that show that if you have window shutters, that the wind can get behind the shutter and actually tear the window off, or at least loosen it and seriously damage it. So these are all considerations that a lot of folks, don't make. Is it better to have shutters than hurricane windows? No, I'd probably go with the hurricane windows if possible. Are they much more expensive? Yes. Preparedness isn't cheap, unfortunately. So financial protection, insurance claims. You want to make sure that you have a good insurance policy. We're going to go over some of that right now. But, the whole point of having insurance is so that you get fully and fairly compensated if you have a loss, right? I mean, that's the whole point. That's why we're paying these enormous premiums, right? To be able to protect ourselves. It's called transfer of risk. You're transferring the risk of the cost of the damage to your home to an insurance company in exchange for this premium that you're paying them, right? So there's also risk transfer happening from insurance companies to policyholders, unfortunately, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Well, mental and emotional well-being. The reason I cover this is because I've been a public insurance adjuster since 1998. I've been the managing director of FAPIA, the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters, since about 2010. I've seen families break apart because of the incredible stress that they're going under when there's catastrophic damage in their community, in their home, in their business. Husbands and wives begin to fight. I've seen people get divorced. It's so important to prepare because it's going to cause anxiety, it's going to cause stress. You have to be ready to be able to reduce or minimize or mitigate that. Next. And by the way, community support. This is so important. So public adjusters, you already know pretty much what they are, so we're going to skip over this because this presentation is too long. Did you know that as a policyholder, you are responsible for proving the loss? That's true. A lot of people think that the insurance company is going to come out and tell you what the loss is. Well, that's kind of like letting the IRS do your taxes, isn't it? Truthfully. So you are responsible for proving the loss. In fact, if you don't show the insurance company that you have a particular loss and bring it to their attention and give them, backup documentations, they're not really going to do anything about it. They're not going to come out and try to find things for you to claim. They're going to say, no, I don't think so. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, and I don't want to think all insurance companies in a bad light, they're not all terrible. Sometimes you might not even need a public insurance adjuster if it's a small claim. If it's anything significant, I would get help because it's not going to be easy, unfortunately. So this is an example of having your own, I was just talking about how insurance companies pay for their experts and all that kind of stuff. This is a brief example that you all should know about. You probably saw that movie, Erin Brockovich. This is a scene where she's explaining what the problem is, and you should be.
It was right up on the PG&E property over here. And you say that this stuff, this hexavalent chromium, well, it's poisonous. Well, Aaron, it's just got to be different than what's in our water, because ours is okay. The guys from PG&E told me. They sat right in the kitchen and told me that it was fine. I know, but the toxicologist that I've been talking to, he gave me a list of problems that can come from hexavalent chromium exposure. Everything you all have is on that list. No, that's not what our doctor said. He said that, well, that one's got absolutely nothing to do with the other. But PG&E paid for that, doctor.
put that video in there because the look on people's faces sometimes when we tell them that engineer that the insurance company sent out that said that it was more wear and tear, or that this was, believe it or not, this is actually something they say, bird droppings that caused the leaks in your roof. They were paid by the insurance company to say these things, and they generally look for things that are excluded in the policy to include in their report. You might have heard after Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy, I'm sorry, this was something that was in 60 Minutes, that there were engineers, the insurance companies were actually redoing the engineers' results, their findings. They were changing the engineers' findings. And the reason it was all discovered was because an engineer who had gone out to inspect a property and told the policyholder what they thought, then the insurance company denied the claim, and he called the engineer, because the guy had called him, so he had him on speakerphone, or on his phone dial, and he said, "What did you do? I don't understand. You told me it was coming." He said, "Yes, that's what I told them too." And the engineer had a copy of his report in his trunk, and he drove over to that person's house, and he said, "This is my report." And they compared the reports, and they were different. So these are, unfortunately, they're looking for ways not to pay. Yes?
That happened in Sunnyvale, Fort Myers. The insurances ignored the report from the adjuster and didn't pay them.
Sadly, it happens all the time, especially when there's a catastrophic loss and they're overwhelmed with claims, and everyone's being understanding, well, the insurance companies are overwhelmed with claims, which is fine. But these kind of things happen all the time, and it's been going on for years. Let me get through this really quick and then I'll get back to you. So there's a section in your policy which is called the terms and conditions, called duties after loss, and you should read that. When you go home, take a look at your insurance policy, read the duties after loss. It's a term and condition, which means it's a term that the policy is requiring, and it's a condition for them to pay. If you don't do something on those terms and conditions, they can deny your claim. And trust me when I tell you, they will deny your claim. That's exactly what they want to do. They may ask you for a recorded statement. They may ask you to go to an examination of an oath. These are things that mean those duties after loss. They might even tell you that you can't hire somebody to fix your house, because they're going to hire somebody to fix your house. That's called a managed repair program. Check, how many people in this room have People's Trust Insurance? Good. That's not even really an insurance company. They're more of a warranty company, but they're called People's Trust Insurance of all names. This is an insurance company that requires you to use their own vendor that they own themselves to make the repairs to your home. And then what ends up happening is that if, God forbid, you don't get along with their vendor, or they did a shoddy job on something and you want them to stop, I'm not going to get my guy out here. Do you know that People's Trust will sue their own policyholders? You can look this up online, Google it, but People's Trust sues policyholders, and article after article will come up. You can look in the Florida Clerk of Courts and put in plaintiff, People's Trust. Hundreds of people will come up. They have sued their own policyholders. And talk about insult to injury. Your home is damaged, you're destroyed, you're looking for help, you're calling 911 and you're getting hung up on. So these are just some statistics which you can find on the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation website. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. There's still 19,000 open claims without payment that are due for Hurricane Ian, and there's 198,000 that they just closed with no payment. Now, could some of those be because of flood, because there were flood damage and not wind damage? Yes, it could be. But 198,000? That's a lot. Next one. And then, of course, some of you might remember Hurricane Irma. That was a big storm. It went all the way up the peninsula, more than 1 million claims. There are still 19,000 claims without being paid. Go ahead, Robert. This is a quote that, if you guys want to scan this on your phone, you'll find this to be very interesting reading, I promise. This is an insurance company defense firm out of Texas who wrote publicly in a blog what we all knew to begin with. This is their own quote. Companies they're writing to insurance companies. They're saying companies that delay claims may experience a number of benefits. First of all, delaying a claim puts pressure on policyholders. These individuals may be dealing with mounting bills for property damage, legal fees, and medical expenses. Most people can't afford to continue fighting with insurance companies for a prolonged period of time. This means that most plaintiffs will be forced to settle for a favorable amount instead of continuing to negotiate for an extended period. In other words, delaying claims forces policyholders to accept lower settlement offers. They said it out loud. It's incredible. And of course, this was taken down immediately. When the whole world started to, oh my God, look what these people are, they took it down immediately.
Insurance is a promise. It's a promise of security in a time of need. And what public adjusters, attorneys, and others do is help the public make sure the insurance companies keep their promise.
So public adjusters as a whole are there to assist and to measure and document the claim on behalf of a policyholder.
Insurance is a foreign language. The average person doesn't have a fighting chance at an insurance company wants to mess with them.
We make insurance companies, dot every I and cross every T when they're determining the value of a loss. The importance of a public adjuster is that we identify that, we hold their feet to the fire, and we take our experiences, some of us who have learned it from the carrier side, and we apply it on the policyholder side.
Being a public adjuster is important because policyholders need a voice in the claims process.
It's very interesting what he just said, what our immediate past president, Edwin Leal, said. He said that a lot of the public insurance adjusters used to work for the insurance companies. We actually did a survey of, we have over 900 members. We did a survey and asked people, did you used to work for insurance companies? So we were trying to get gauge the situation. And if so, why did you become a public adjuster? The number one answer was because I couldn't sleep at night. Go ahead. No, we can skip this one, right? And we can skip that one too. Understanding your policy, the basics. Do you know if you have wind coverage? You might be dealing with more than one insurance company, right? Especially if you're east of US 1. Do you have flood coverage? How many people here do not have flood coverage? Don't be embarrassed. Okay, you should have flood insurance. You really should. Because like the emergency manager was discussing earlier, that's one of the number one problems. That's the thing that causes the most damage. Okay, I know it's not inexpensive, but it's a very important type of coverage, especially if you're living around this area, which was so damaged due to Hurricane Andrew. All of you that raised your hands, you know how the flooding and surging happened. That was bad. I mean, I was in Kendall. I wasn't quite this in this area or in Homestead, which really got hit mostly with the winds. But I remember seeing videos of folks that were in Cutler Bay, where their homes were just overtaken with water. And that's horrible. That causes so much damage. Do you know if your policy is what they call a multi-peril policy or a named peril policy? Multi-peril means it's all risk. It covers everything unless it's specifically excluded. And that's the most typical policy that folks have. Named peril policy is much less expensive, but it only covers a certain number of things. I think it's like 12 things, if I'm not mistaken. Fire, wind, there's a whole list, but that's what you call a named peril policy, okay? Do you know what your deductible is? Well, deductibles are getting out of hand because people are trying to save money on the premiums, right? But when you have a loss, that's the risk transfer. That's part of the risk transfer. They're going to say, well, 10% of your coverage A, which is usually your dwelling, the actual structure, is 10% is your deductible. And what happens if you got a $500,000, coverage A, which is not uncommon in South Florida, you got a $50,000 deductible. That's going to be out of your pocket if there's a claim. So take a look at your deductible, make sure that you are able to handle that type of risk, and how much coverage do you actually have on your policy? How much coverage do you have on your policy? With the increases in inflation with labor and materials that have gone on, we don't have to talk about inflation. I don't have to explain that to everybody. But that has affected labor and materials. I remember several years ago, you used to be able to buy a sheet of plywood for about $6 or $7 or maybe $8. You go online right now, it's $30, and that's come down because just a couple of years ago, it went up to something like $50 per sheet of plywood. It's just plywood. It's nothing special. Okay, so your policy, coverage A is your dwelling. Okay, that means the house, right? Coverage B is usually other structures. Meaning, if you have like a detached garage, what's that? A shed, anything that's not attached. It could be your fence, exactly. All the public adjusters are like, fence, don't forget. And coverage C is your contents. Take a look at your contents coverage because a lot of people skip on the contents coverage thinking, oh, I'll just need my bed and my couch and my TV. There's a lot more in your house than you can imagine. Do an inventory. And do a good inventory before the storm. Take pictures, take video, but do an inventory because when you do that and you start adding up what all that comes to, it's going to be a lot more than you think. And all of that is covered under coverage C. Coverage D is one that most people don't know about, additional living expense. Additional living expense is what covers you in the event that you need to leave your home. Your house is not livable anymore. For whatever reason, you don't have a roof, you've got to move to a hotel, you gotta rent another house, something that's going to be out of pocket additional living expense. Now, additional living expense covers a lot of other things, but the most important thing is the place you're going to stay, right? Do you have enough? A lot of agents will skimp on that ALE, and what happens when you run out? Let's say you've got $20,000 in additional living expense. How long is that going to last you renting a house? I mean, if you're lucky, maybe 6 months, I don't know, 4 months, and then it's done, and they don't have to pay you anymore. So take a look at that, because that's a very important type of coverage. I want everybody to go home and take a look at their insurance policies, please. And if you have any questions, we have some wonderful FAPIA members. The public adjusters, each one of them that are in this room, are members of the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. That means they've been vetted, they have a code of ethics that they deal with. These are good folks. Talk to them. Get their business card. And law and ordinance, you go to the next one. Law and ordinance is a coverage that's under your policy that some policies exclude completely. You have to have law and ordinance, particularly if your home is over 20 years old. Because guess what? The building code has changed. And that can be expensive. If the building code has changed, you need to have law and ordinance coverage to be able to cover those additional upgrades that you have to make on your house now. Do you know? Okay, so hidden exclusions and endorsements, those drive me crazy. How many people have ever read their insurance policy? Be honest. We have more than I thought. And the public adjusters, don't raise your hands, for goodness sakes. Of course you've read the policies. There are all kinds of documents that are attached to insurance policies called endorsements that have language in it, which is called legalese, that will say, yes, you're covered for this, you're covered for that, you're covered for everything, except if it's Wednesday. Or unless, your car was parked a mile away from the house. Of course, I'm being facetious, but there's all these unless and except and if things that when you're doing a quick overview of your policy, it's going to look like you're covered. I'm covered for everything, except people are wrong. So when you reach an impasse, everybody understands an impasse. You don't agree. The insurance company says yes, or let's say it the other way around. Remember, your insurance company says no. You say yes. You can't agree. You just can't get together on this. And so there's dispute resolution options. There's mediation, which is not binding. There's appraisal, which is binding. That means the decision is final. Costs a little bit more. But how do you know which one is better for you, appraisal or mediation? Which one is going to be the best option? That's where your public insurance adjuster comes in, because they're going to guide you through that process. They're going to tell you, you know what? In your case, I think we should probably go to mediation first and see what happens. Maybe we'll see them show their hand, maybe we can figure something out. Or in your case, the whole issue here has to do with the scope of loss. Let's go straight to appraisal. Let's not waste any more time. There's also arbitration popping up in policies. This is horrible, because some policies, that arbitration clause requires you to travel, you're not gonna believe this, to go to New York, where they have the arbitration association of whatever, to go to arbitration. You don't even have to, you can't even do it here in Florida, you gotta go to New York. Can you imagine? That doesn't even make any sense to me, but that's in those policies, some policies. And of course there's litigation, which everybody is like the whole big bad attorneys. You know what? Nobody wants to go to an attorney. Nobody wants to be in a lawsuit. But if your insurance company is behaving badly and they've breached their contract and their trust that you paid them to have with you, you know, sometimes you've got to file a lawsuit against them. Sometimes you've got to push and enforce it and make it happen. Unfortunately, in 2022, the legislature in Florida removed a very important consumer protection, which was when if you file a lawsuit for something that your insurance company was supposed to pay and they end up having to pay it, it used to be that the insurance company would have to cover your attorney's fees. Slap on the wrist. No more. Now that money's going to come out of your indemnity. So if you got paid $100,000, your attorney's going to charge you $40,000 for their time? That's coming out of your pocket. Thank you, Florida legislature. Keep going. Pre-hurricane. Download, there was some apps mentioned earlier. Download the FEMA app. Go to FloridaDisaster.org. There's all kinds of information there. Ready.gov is a federal one that talks about other disasters, not just hurricanes. And then there's BeClaimSmart.com. Little known, but BeClaimSmart.com will let you check on the licenses of anybody that you're working with. And that includes the insurance company adjuster, by the way. Do you know that there was a lawsuit that was filed several weeks ago against Heritage Insurance because for Hurricane Irma, allegedly, they handled 4,800 claims with unlicensed people. Why is it so important that the people be licensed? Because when you're licensed, you're required to be trained. You're required to go over testing. They check your criminal background. People that are licensed are under all kinds of stringent requirements. They just picked up anybody they could, sent them out there on 4,800 claims, and who knows what happened in those claims. But they're getting a lawsuit now. This is the same company that just got $1 million fine from the state because they treated their Ian victims terribly. $1 million. Right now, okay, we already went over this in the other one, so keep going. During the hurricane, let me tell you, battery operated, of course, radio, fans. It's so hot. Get a battery operated fan. If you don't have a generator, make sure you got battery. And another one is really interesting that not a lot of people think about. Don't pick candles. Candles can cause a fire. Get those flameless candles that you put a couple of batteries in. They last for days and days and days. And I know because I have them. They last forever, and there's no, problem with a secondary type of damage to your home or damage to you. Evacuate, good God. Don't be one of those people if they call an evacuation or I was through this, like this. No, just go. Save your life. You can't do anything to save your house from the hurricane by staying home. Trust me. So please do evacuate and help your obviously check in with your family, and if you have any elderly neighbors, check in on them too, please. Next one. And I think we're almost at the end now. There's only one more slide.
Helping people and getting them back to where they were before loss just is very important to me. They need help. They can't navigate it alone. And that's why I love what I do. Simply.
My mom and dad always taught me to give. And they always said, you give and you shall receive. And I have found that when you give everything to the policyholder and you take that fight to the insurance company, what we receive in return can't be measured.
I personally handled so many claims when I was a practicing public insurance adjuster where the insurance company had made me pay them $2,000 on a claim. And I would go out there and see this house with leaking roof and all this other kind of stuff. And it was like mostly elderly people, which is horrible, but it's true. And I would go out there and help these folks and show up with a check that the insurance company sent me for $80,000. They would break down crying because their roof needed to be replaced. It was leaking terribly. There was all kinds of damage that first insurance adjuster, God knows if he was even licensed, right? Came in and said, $2,000, goodbye, next. Because they get paid on the number of claims that they handle. Keep that in mind. So they'll spend 2 minutes at your house and go to 15 other houses. Public adjuster is going to go to your house and tooth and nail. Wait a second, hold on. There's some stuff on this wall that needs to be. They're going to cover every little detail. And you know what? That's what you need to put your house back in pre-loss condition, which is what the whole point of having insurance is. I think we're on the last one. Get Ready Florida. Visit us. Let us know what you think and ask any questions. And right now, if anybody has any questions.
Is there ever a case where your insurance adjuster, insurance company comes and says, you cannot contact a private adjuster? What do you do about that?
Oh no, definitely. Call me, let me know, because I have very good contacts at the Department of Financial Services, and I'll be happy to return those folks in. That is a violation of the Florida Administrative Code. The Florida Administrative Code prohibits insurance adjusters from dissuading the public from hiring a public adjuster, it specifically says that, or legal counsel, okay? There is one type of insurance policy that is starting to proliferate in Florida. It's called the surplus lines policy. These surplus lines policies are federally regulated, they're not regulated by the state of Florida, so essentially they can put whatever they want in there, and Florida can't do anything about it, okay? Some of these companies are now adding an endorsement. Remember those endorsements I was talking about? It's called the anti-public adjuster endorsement. So you buy your insurance, but you agree that you will never get any help from a public insurance adjuster. So keep an eye. If your agent tries to sell you a surplus lines policy, take a look at that. Make sure. But on the regular admitted carriers, no, that is not permitted. My name is Nancy Dominguez, and I'm the Managing Director of Falcon. Thank you, guys. All the public adjusters out there at Falcon. And my business card is right there on that first desk, and I'll bring some in a minute, but the business card and also the card for Ask Oaxaca, which is another whole thing which I couldn't get to, and BeClaimSmart.com. I have one more over here. I'll go ahead.
This isn't an actual question, but I just wanted to say, during Irma, we had everything we talked about
During Irma, everything that I talked about happened to her.
A friend of mine said she go to the public adjuster.
And a friend of hers went with a public adjuster. She doesn't know who it was.
I mean, I didn't know what.
Oh, she didn't know what it was.
But I called, and he came to our house. He did everything the original guy from Michigan in white pants and yellow shirt did not do, which was go up on the roof.
Yeah.
And
He went up on the roof, which the insurance company wouldn't do.
Well, he was from Michigan.
Oh, he was from Michigan.
Probably not licensed.
Probably not.
Said I had like $800 or something that wouldn't cover the deductible. So when I called...
So her claim, according to the Michigan adjuster, who's probably not licensed, was under her deductible, which means that they weren't going to pay. They weren't going to pay.
Called the public adjuster. He went up on my roof. He said, you need a whole roof.
Public adjuster came out, did a full inspection, went up on the roof, said you got to replace the roof.
My insurance was with Citizens.
She was with Citizens.
And he took the case. I turned over my policy. He didn't have to do anything.
She didn't have to do anything. The public adjuster took care of everything.
Then they said, we're going to have to sue them.
We're going to have to sue them. Unfortunately, it got to that point.
My concern was, what if they drop me?
And she was concerned about whether or not Citizens was going to drop her, which is a big concern a lot of people have.
Just call us, the attorney. She walks me through, she called
Public
me.
adjuster told her, call me if that happens. She walked her through the whole thing.
So we went to mediation.
They went to mediation.
If they had just covered my roof originally, it probably would have been about $20,000 because that's what it cost.
If they had just covered just the roof, which is what she originally wanted, it would have been about $20,000.
$70,000, which covered the attorney's fees as well.
She ended up getting over $70,000.
Sorry to say, I don't believe in suing, and I was very hesitant.
Nobody wants to sue. I don't want to sue.
But that's what it came to. They breached the contract.
I'll tell you what, I don't want to sue anybody, but if you tell me that you're going to do something and I pay you to do that, and you say, you know what, no, I don't think so, I'm going to sue you.
Nancy, I have you as a contact now. But my question is, how and where do we go if you want a public adjuster and somebody comes and says, I'm a public adjuster, you ask them for the license, et cetera, or is there or do you go to that site that you put up there to make sure that they are legally public adjusters?
Great question. Always select a FAPIA member public adjuster. And I'm not trying to say this just because FAPIA member and public adjusters, we have an ethics committee, we hold them to a higher standard. If you go to beclaimsmart.com, you can check on adjusters from the insurance company, you can check on contractors, roofers, public adjusters. You can even check on the Florida bar to make sure that the attorney doesn't have any disciplinary actions or anything like that. It's a very handy resource you should definitely hold on to. And yes, select a FAPIA member public adjuster. There's one with her hand raised right now.
There's a lot of people knocking on the doors. They hand you a business card. If there's no license number on it, they're not a public adjuster. Legally, we have to have our license number on a business card. If there's no license number, they're representing themselves as licensed. That's against the law.
That is a third-degree felony. It's not just against the law, it's not a misdemeanor, it's a third-degree felony.
They're going around the neighborhood, knocking on doors.
I don't have an issue because I wasn't flooded, but I'm just curious. If you have a flood policy, would this week's, we all saw what happened in Miami-Dade. Is that covered under a flood policy?
It absolutely is. There's a specific definition for flood, and it usually means it's not surge, it's flood is rising water, okay? So if it rains to the point where more than, I think it's 1 acre, if I'm not mistaken, 2 acres? 2 acres and two homes are damaged, which of course this week's flooding would meet that criteria. Yes, that is covered under your flood insurance. Let me give you another flood insurance tip, very important. Flood insurance there's a document that is used in insurance claims called a proof of loss. Nobody knows this, but in flood insurance, if you don't send in your proof of loss document within 60 days, what can they do? That's right. They will deny your claim. Now, how many people would have known that? You're in the middle of a catastrophe situation, your house is flooded out, days are going by, you're trying to resolve this, you're trying to resolve. In no time, 60 days are going to pass. They will deny your claim if you didn't get that proof of loss in. Isn't that something? One more thing I want to say about flood insurance. If you purchase a flood insurance policy today, it will not be in effect until 30 days from today. So if they tell you in the news, oh, we're expecting flooding next week, oh, I get insurance right now. It's not going to go into effect for 30 days. So get your flood insurance. Okay, she has a big question.
You can hear me. What would be the proof of loss? Would that be a video?
No, it's an actual document. Yeah, it's an actual document, and it says on the top, proof of loss. And the proof of loss document you have to use in flood insurance, that you have to use their specific proof of loss. You can't even do one that you find online or anything like that. It has to be the one from FEMA, the National Flood Insurance Program proof of loss form. And that document will say how much insurance, I don't even know why they require this. How much insurance do you have? You gotta fill it in. What's your deductible? Do they not know this information? How much damage do you have? Okay, we gotta put a number in there. You gotta do it from coverage A, from coverage, all the different coverages that you have. Now, I should say flood insurance has different types of coverage. I don't think they cover other structures, right? It's just your dwelling and your contents. That's all they cover. There's not going to be any additional living expense. There's not going to be any other structures. What's that? No mold. They don't cover mold. Yeah, there are a lot of restrictions. I understand why they have the restrictions, and I'll tell you why. Because flood is the single most common type of loss, and it's expensive. Okay, when you have a widespread area, Unfortunately, my understanding is that in Broward County, with all these terrible floods that just happened, there's like 200,000 people that don't have flood insurance coverage, and their homes are like full of 2-3 feet of water.
So what do they normally cover? Dwelling and what else?
Dwelling and contents. Your personal property, that's exactly
That
what.
would come from your other insurance?
No, if the cause of loss is the trigger, folks. If the cause of loss is flood, then the flood insurance policy is the one that kicks in, without the other structures, without the additional living expense, because it's not covered, right? If the cause of loss is wind, let's just say it's wind, because it could be fire, it could be all these other types of losses, right? But let's just talk about hurricanes. If it's wind, then that's the policy that comes into effect, which will either be your wind policy or your multi-peril policy, depending on how you have that set up. Does anybody else have any more questions? Folks, if you have any more questions, we do have some great public adjusters in the room, thankfully. Please go visit them, get their cards, have them on standby. God forbid there's a storm, you know? You don't want to be trying to find, I have to be honest with you, after catastrophic events, it's kind of hard to lock down a public adjuster. There aren't that many of us. There aren't that many of us. So get their card, have it on speed dial, and immediately after the storm, I would even tell them to put your name on a list so they call you after the storm. You know? Because honestly, it's going to be hard to get a hold of people. There's going to be cell phone lines that are going to be down, no electricity. They might have suffered damage in their own home. You never know. So lock these folks down now. I'm sorry, I went way over, but I hope I answered everyone's questions.